Carolina, I have over 700,000 constituents, all of which certainly didn't vote for me. And I have to take everyone's perspective in mind. I have to make sure that I'm protecting every constituent, regardless of where they sit, if they vote, if they don't vote. So it's almost as if we have to take all of these things into consideration. And I do believe that moving forward with this approach of looking for true factual data and science-based information, that this is the approach that we need to take into the future. And unfortunately, I believe in the past it hasn't been taken into consideration, or at least not well enough when it comes to issues. I think we have to look at, part of the driving force behind this, again, is knowing that the taxpayer dollars are being spent on issues that are not being solved. There's no one in this country that doesn't believe we need to help our neighbor. That goes across the board. I think that's who we are as a country, that's how our country was founded. However, I think the frustration that you hear from our constituents is, why are these dollars being spent when we know it's not solving the problem? So by taking this approach, and there again, it is going to take time. None of these things are going to be proven within a year's time or an election cycle. So that's part of the frustration that will play in as well. But at the same time, we have to realize that we've got to do this better. There's got to be an answer. So policymakers, those of us in Washington, there again, I'm already embracing this. I'm a solution-oriented representative. I want solutions. I don't want to just feed into the red tape and the bureaucracy that has existed. I really want to make a difference. So for me, that's my driving force. We just have to make that message with the rest of our colleagues and maybe stay away a little bit from the politics and the principles that they believe are guiding them, and maybe see things from a little bit of a different perspective.
Can I just add one thing to that too? Because I think it agrees 100% with what you're saying, and I think having some sort of intermediary or somebody who can validate whether the evidence is real or whether it's not credible is important. The Department of Education in the Bush administration, and then it's been expanded in the Obama administration, created this thing called the What Works Clearinghouse around education as a way to start to help practitioners in education, policymakers understand and sort through and sift through what is real and what's not real, what works and what doesn't work. So that's one step forward. And so one of the things we're pushing is that every agency should have this What Works Clearinghouse. The Labor Department launched one recently, and other agencies should have it, just to sort of begin to tell people, what makes a difference. They're not perfect by any means, and we have to make sure they don't get politicized. But it's a step in the right direction. I think the other thing too is sort of, if the private sector is figuring out how to make these better decisions, what can government learn from that and sort of make the leap forward, so all of the testing and trying that the private sector did doesn't have to happen in government, so that government can sort of adopt some of the things that are currently being used, so that decisions can be made, knowing that there aren't PhDs necessarily in data analytics, and a lot of the people that are in government haven't been exposed to this. So what are the ways in which partnerships can happen between the private sector and government to make sure that learning happens and that the results can happen without necessarily having to leave people to come into government to teach it.
And